What's going on, everyone? We hope you had a phenomenal weekend, and it is now about that time to jump right back into the markets. On Friday, SPY ended up starting out pretty weak, but as the day went on, the rocket burners definitely turned on, and the market closed in a very strong way. So much so that some options on Friday literally moved up by like 400,000%. We'll talk about that in just a second. But needless to say, the stock market volatility and craziness is definitely heating up, which should make for some pretty exciting opportunities for the week. So make sure to stick with us all the way into the end. But looking at the heat map from Friday, Tom, around 85% of stocks finished in the green, which is quite a lot. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, that was actually a lot of stocks in the green, and there was quite a bit. Oil was in the green by a bit. You know, we even saw like Disney and McDonald's up into the green. I will say tech seemed a little bit lagging again on Friday, Mike. Like we can see like Google, Meta, Microsoft, they were just barely in the green, if not even red. Nvidia actually closed down in the red on Friday, so that's pretty insane to say, but the market had a crazy recovery there. And Mike, I'll be real with you. I scoured the news feeds for hours here looking for like a true, like real reason why the market exploded up this much on Friday, and I couldn't find one. You know, maybe there's something to do with like the Trump trial going on. Maybe there's something to do with foreign markets, something like that. But if you guys have any crazy ideas, let us know in the comments down below. I'll be curious to read what you guys have to say. But we could just say overall, Mike, that there was just a true recovery in the overall market. And even if we go look at a lot of those tech stocks I mentioned, a lot of them ended up closing up towards their highs of the day from Friday, if not even making new highs of the day. So that was very interesting on some of the big tech stocks. And of course, like a lot of the, I would say, slower stocks out there like McDonald's had really good days. Like look at MCD on Friday. That's a pretty crazy chart for a slow moving stock like McDonald's. It was up 2.7%. So I feel like these types of stocks really carried the market more than like Nvidia on Friday, right? But we will talk about some Nvidia news coming up, but I just wanted to really talk about that movement on the overall market Friday because that was a pretty insane drop. Like it actually made new lows of the week and then almost got back up towards its price it opened at Tuesday.
Well, what's pretty interesting is when you go to like, let's say a daily chart and you look at SPY, on Friday, like earlier on, the market was actually towards like the lower end of its range that it's seen in a little while. And then to see a recovery like we saw definitely says a lot because that shows that buyers are defending this area in a pretty strong way. And like I said in the intro of the video, the move on Friday was literally so crazy. And this is, a complete like gamble in this scenario, but the move on Friday was so big that if someone put $2,000 into some SPX call options, they would have turned that into over $1 million with out of the money SPX calls that literally went from like $1 all the way up to over $4,200. Again, this would have been a complete gamble, and it's only easy to look back on this like after it happened, but it literally shows you how crazy the move was. So with that being said, heading into the market this week, you already know some of that volatility is going to spill over.
It has to, right? And I know that a lot of people are probably going to try to catch some pretty crazy moves from this. So guys, I just want to reiterate, buying contracts at $1 and hoping they go up to $42 is pretty unrealistic, right? Like we have to see a very rare event or rare move out of the market, kind of like we saw Friday. But I definitely hope some of that volatility continues to spill over, Mike, because we had some pretty crazy movement overall last week. And I'm kind of glad that the market picked a good direction, right? Like you can see here, there's a nice blue channel. It was kind of following to the downside. Pretty solid moves, right? It was fairly consistent to the downside. We had a lot of intraday opportunities associated with that as well throughout the week. But, I will say this, it was fairly choppy overall, but I really love that big move from Friday. Like that is just such a nice move on the stock. And if we keep getting movement like that this week, we'll be at new all-time highs soon. We're only a couple dollars away again, right? We're all the way back up to 528. That move actually made up for like almost the whole week last week. So if this definitely sticks around, Mike, we'll see some pretty good opportunities out there. And, I start to look at the heat map and I'm like, man, like I always want to chase tech, but it looks like the financial sector did pretty hot, as well as even like healthcare and like I talked about earlier, like McDonald's and Disney and some of these stocks that we necessarily don't talk about or haven't been talking about too much lately.
True. So while it's nice to look back on key areas and key moves from last week, looking at SPY right now for this week, what would you say are the main key levels to watch out for?
So the biggest level that I'm looking at to start things off is going to be the 531.50 resistance. And it's right where all those red arrows are pointing right up there at the top, pretty much between 530 and 531.50. There has been a lot of chop on the market right there. So I'm definitely going to be watching that as a solid resistance. And there are a couple resistances mixed in on the way up. And one of them, the SPY is actually consolidating at right now. So as Friday closed, it's right around 528, which to me is a huge resistance on the chart. There's been a lot of hits right around that 528 level. So if we do break up through that, I'll be looking at 529.15 and then 530 and then 531.50 overhead. As support, I do like using 526 and then 525, which we broke out above Friday as a nice support. So that's kind of what I'm looking for this week, Mike. And I think a lot of people are going to have their sights on this overhead resistance around 530 to 531.50.
There we go. And in the same way levels are important, it's also very important to look at some of these powerhouse big tech stocks like Nvidia. So as we all know, this stock has just been ripping nonstop for years at this point. The stock is lingering right around this $1,100 area, and there has been just a little bit of increased selling pressure over the past couple days, but nothing too crazy. But I saw they had, I guess you could say, even more news recently. So what's going on with this one?
Oh my gosh, Mike, you know how Boeing always has bad news? It's like Nvidia always has good news, right? And like whenever we start to look at this stock, they announced a new AI chip again just months after their last launch. So I don't know about you, Mike, and obviously keep in mind, guys, that these chips can get kind of complicated, right? Like there's always new chip technology coming out. They're changing the architecture on these things, and we don't want to get too in depth with that, right? Or else this would be a science show. We don't really want to do something like that. But at the end of the day, they're coming out with some new chips, and it's another good piece of news for Nvidia, in my opinion, right? Like they just keep adapting, they keep innovating and coming out with new things, and to just continue to use the words AI in these headlines, I mean, that's going to be a big boost for them, right? It's another AI chip, and they've been like the kings of AI. So I'm definitely going to keep my eyes on Nvidia, Mike. I'm not necessarily sure whether or not this news is going to make them like explode a ton or not. We'll have to see. There's already so much momentum on the stock, but like, let's say tomorrow morning it starts gapping up and we see some good flows around open. There could maybe be an opportunity there. So I will be watching Nvidia this week very, very closely, of course, as everybody will be, I'm sure, because it's been the most popular stock in the market. But what I will say that does worry me is, the overall market had that great comeback Friday, and I don't know, Nvidia was a bit lacking there.
True that, but either way, keep a very close eye on this one going forward because the way in which Nvidia moves has a very strong direct influence on the overall market. But Tom, I also saw there was some pretty interesting OPEC news that just came out as well.
Yeah, there was, Mike. And crude oils have been a pretty hot topic this year. Crude has actually ran up quite a bit. And over the past couple months, it's actually been pulling back a little bit. And I've actually heard a lot of people out there saying, Tom, are you going to buy the dip on oil? Are we buying the dip? It's now like 12 to 13% off its recent highs. It's sitting right around a $76 support. And something that OPEC came out and did is they're actually extending their production cuts into 2025, which is a pretty big deal for oil here. Now, of course, some people might have been expecting or contemplating that they would do this, but still, nonetheless, with them extending this, that's a pretty big piece of news. And the last time that they extended something like this was right around March 3rd of 2024, somewhere right around there. And whenever I go to the chart, Mike, and I start to look at crude oil, I'm like, okay, let's find like March 3rd. It was like right here in the middle of this blue circle. Oil did like fade for like a week or so, and then we had that huge extension to the upside pushing towards $87. Now, that could have been attributed to multiple things, but OPEC doing their production cuts essentially makes oil go up in price, in the grand scheme of things. Now, of course, there's always going to be outside influences and etc., but whenever you talk about supply and demand, production cuts essentially is putting less oil onto the market. So, Mike, it's kind of boosting the demand for oil, so to say, and in a macroeconomic sense, I think a lot of people are going to be looking at these stocks like Oxy, ZOM, BP, and others that have been dipping recently. And I think a lot of people are going to start to look at this as maybe a dip buying opportunity, like I mentioned earlier. So I don't know. It's a pretty interesting situation with oil. And guys, let me know in the comments if you are an oil fan, because some of these oil stocks have pretty insane moves, like Oxy, which just had like a pretty solid 25% pop, and now as it pulled back, it just pulled back around 15%. So there's definitely some opportunities here on oil. Like, let's say if these stocks do start to rise in the short term.
There we go. Yeah, oil and energy-related companies definitely move in some pretty volatile ways, and there's a lot of opportunities associated with them. But another thing we just have to talk about is the earnings lineup for the week. So there are a handful of stocks set to report. Some of the top ones from the list that I will be watching are CrowdStrike on Tuesday after close. We have Lululemon on Wednesday after close, and then we have NEO before open on Thursday. And I would say those are my top three, but there's a handful of them that are set to report. So it should be a pretty fun week.
Yeah, it should. I think Lulu will be extremely interesting. Everybody always likes to talk about Lululemon, right? Because, like, whenever you go to the mall, I don't know about you guys, but when I go to the mall, there's always, like, a line around the store just to get into Lululemon, especially during COVID there was. So it's a pretty crazy store, though. People always talk about that one. CrowdStrike's pretty big for the tech industry there. So there we go, Mike. There's a lot of earnings this week. Obviously, earnings season is starting to cool off a little bit from, what we've seen the past few weeks and couple months with like Nvidia and Apple and all those different ones. But I know NEO will be interesting too. A lot of people are going to be looking for those numbers as a lot of people hold shares on NEO. And Mike, like if we go to a chart of NEO, it's been stuck down in the dumps. I mean, it's about time they have a good report here.
Yeah, it's like do or die for them. I mean, not literally, but yeah, it would definitely be beneficial if the stock definitely had a good reaction to this week's earnings release. But definitely keep a very close eye on this one for the week. And then how's the economic schedule looking?
Yeah, there is a couple things here. So tomorrow we're going to have the ISM manufacturing PMI come out at 10 a.m. Eastern time. That'll be pretty big. And then Tuesday, we'll have JOLTS job openings. And then Wednesday, we got ISM services PMI. And then on Friday, we do have the non-farm payrolls and unemployment rate, but we will cover that later in the week. So for tomorrow, the main thing is just 10 a.m. Eastern time. That manufacturing PMI will come out. Sometimes that moves the market, sometimes not. I guess we'll have to see how good or bad it does compared to expectations.
Sounds great. Well, let's jump right into some setups and predictions for the week. A stock I'm watching very closely right now is Chewy. So CHWY. This stock had a good reaction to its earnings release last week, and it has been moving in a pretty strong and momentum-filled way, which is always great to see. It has been holding this like $21 area nicely as well, and overall this stock has just been getting taken to the woodshed over the past couple of years, and it is finally starting to see some daylight. It does have a whole lot of resistance overhead, but again, it's kind of like starting to get a lot of the momentum back that it used to have a couple of years ago. But either way, I really like the short-term price action with this one, and I will be watching it very closely to the upside in the short term. It's not necessarily just for tomorrow, but more so like the next couple of days and even like the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, if it could start to break out of this like little range it's starting to form after these earnings, that would be a pretty fun play here in the short term. So I'll keep my eyes on Chewy. It'd be nice to see a continuation following those earnings. With my first play, I'm actually looking at Boeing in both directions this week. So Boeing is a pretty big short-term support right around 170. And I'm going to be watching that level very, very closely. Like, let's say we open up tomorrow and Boeing ends up turning over and breaking below 170, then I will look at opportunities down. But even in the short term, I'm going to be looking at opportunities back up on Boeing as well. So if we go to the daily chart, you can see Boeing's been dipping quite a bit here over the past couple weeks, and it's starting to recover a bit. So if it can break back above like 178.50, then I will look at that recovery. But, I'm looking at this one in both directions, Mike. I really like the crazy moves it's had recently, and I think there's just a lot of volatility here and a lot of good short-term opportunities.
All right, sounds great. Another stock I'm watching very closely is PENN, PENN. This one soared on Friday as news came out that an activist investor is looking to just push to get the company sold, and the market definitely loved that news for Penn. This is another one of those stocks that has been beaten down so badly, and it's now finally starting to see some daylight. But either way, the short-term price action has been phenomenal, and Penn is just one of those stocks that when it does actually have good momentum, it has potential to run for multiple weeks to months at a time. It's just more so about establishing that momentum and then keeping it. And as of right now, it's definitely off to a very good start. So I'm going to continue to watch this one very closely. Again, not just for tomorrow, but even like the next couple weeks and months.
Yeah, and we actually recently had a big money play that came out on May 17th with the Penn with 15 strike calls. There was about $1 million put into the September 20th expiration on that 15 strikes. So that's pretty interesting with Penn. That move Friday definitely did well for those options, which had actually been doing pretty bad in the short term. It was kind of a failed big money play. I don't know, Mike. Did the big money know something here? They just might have. Watch this was like the activist investor, right? No, I'm just kidding. But with my next play, I'm looking at UPS and I'm looking at the daily chart. Still, I talked about this one last week, and we have had the most perfect support bounce I think that you could actually ever get. It came within 10 cents of that huge support that I'm marking on the chart, and we've had two very solid green days come in after this. And, following that support bounce last time, UPS had a lot of bullish movement for the next couple months following that. So I'm just going to keep looking for those nice opportunities on UPS back to the upside here in the short term. I will say, though, if there's like one more green day, you just have to be prepared for little pullbacks on the uptrend, kind of like we saw at the beginning of the uptrend the last time the support hit.
All right, sounds great. Well, I think it is now about that time for today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have WBA to the upside.
Walgreens, very interesting stock, right? Finally coming back after falling off a ton. If they can break above 1640, I'll look at opportunities up.
Sounds good. Yeah, this one's at like 25-year lows right now, so it's good to finally see it pop up a little bit. But yeah, definitely keep a close eye on Walgreens. With the next one, we have NIO also to the upside.
Yeah, and don't forget, guys, they do have earnings this week, but heading into those earnings, it could be a good opportunity. Go ahead and make them break above $5.55.
And with the last one, we have MU for both directions.
Micron. Now, this is another stock, Mike, that on Friday I was kind of surprised didn't get back into the green with the way the market popped up, but it did start moving a bit. If it can re-break above 126, then I'll look at opportunities up tomorrow. But if it breaks back under that 121.50 support, then I'll have to watch it down. That's a pretty big support in the short term.
Sounds good. So we have that downside level for a move down. We have the upside level for a move higher. And then don't forget about NIO and WBA as well for potential upside moves. Either way, these three stocks are on potential watch tomorrow if and only if they break through the levels Tom listed. The stronger and more consistent the price action is, the better the setups become. So keep a close eye on these three stocks for tomorrow. And let's jump right into today's $1.2 million big money trade, and we are looking at ticker symbol FLR. So FLR has been moving in a pretty strong way over the past couple of years, and in the short term, it is just about triple topping right around this like $43.25 area. Basically, on Friday, the big money opened a new bullish trade with this stock where it's going to sound complicated at first, but basically what they did is they bought the 45 strike calls, they shorted the 55 strike calls, both of which expire on November 15th of 2024. They put around $1.2 million into this trade, and it is technically a call debit spread. But if you want to make your life nice and simple, instead of trading this complex option spread, you can just trade the 45 strike call options for November 15th of 2024, and it will be a very similar trade. Either way, the big money wants this stock to go up in the short term, and looking at the stock, again, it has been trending in a pretty strong way, and I'll definitely keep a close eye on it.
That triple top is pretty huge, and to see it moving above the resistance that well on Friday, that's a really good sign here in the short term. And, even if we go to like an hourly chart just to like double check to make sure there weren't any, pre-market resistances or anything like that overhead, it's pretty good to see that nice extension up. So I'm wondering how much in the short term this could go up here, but they do have this expiring out in November. So keep that in mind, guys. It probably won't be a play that's necessarily designed for tomorrow, but I'll tell you what, I'm definitely going to be watching the short-term opportunities here, Mike, because that triple top breaking is a pretty good deal. And, it's $1 million in the big money play. I know it's not the biggest ever, but it's not the smallest either. 1.2 million is fairly respectable there. So overall, I really like this, especially, like I said, for the shorter term as that resistance starts to break.
All right, there we go. But looking at the market for this week, I'm pretty excited because that Friday price action was definitely pretty crazy. We have a handful of stocks making some pretty big moves in both directions, and we're still pretty close to the all-time high, while we have some of these big tech stocks like Nvidia at some pretty crazy levels. So I'm pretty excited for the week overall. If you guys are into short-term trading, definitely check out the StockedUp trading floor if you haven't already. On Friday, there was a phenomenal play with some Amazon put options that increased by 104% with our surge bot. And then on Thursday, it was another amazing day. There were Microsoft puts that increased by 221%, PANW puts that increased by 210%, and of course, there was one losing trade as well with CGC. But 3 out of the last 4 plays just hit it out of the park. And yeah, overall, everything's been great. Basically, if you want to get in, you'll get access to chat with Tom and myself all day long. You can join our live event, access the big money trades before they're posted in these videos, access all of our other bots, and it is the place to be if you're in the short-term trading. So it'll be that first link in the description in the comments down below. And Tom, while we're still in the Discord, let's give a giant shout out to our member of the day, Michael E. in the StockedUp trading floor. He said it was his first full green week of options trading, which was amazing to see. And he even wrote a phenomenal post in the testimonials channel with a lot of great things. So huge shout out to Michael E. Keep up all the great work and keep this momentum rolling. But besides that, Tom, do you have any final thoughts before we close out?
Yeah, one final thing I just want to say is I know that we say this a lot, Mike, but just keep making smart trading decisions and keep practicing safe trading habits. Do not risk your whole account on each play. I know it's tempting, Mike. If we go look at what we had here, you could turn $1 into $4,200, a 425,000% return. Just remember, some of this stuff can be a little bit risky, guys. So keep that risk in check, and let's have a great week here. Here's the earnings calendar if you guys want to go back and look at it. Neo's going to be one of my favorites for the week, but let's have a good one, Mike.
There we go. And again, check out that first link in the description and the comments down below for the trading floor. And besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and let's make this week a great one.